welcome to Practice Intimacy. This is the place to be to learn all about love, sex, and how to have the best relationships you possibly can. I'm Jami Lynn. I'm a marriage and family therapist in the Austin area, and I am excited to talk to you today about healthy selfishness, specifically healthy selfishness in sex. And they might sound like opposites, like those two things cannot live together, but in reality, the best sex you will have, the best sexual partners you will have, includes a sense of healthy selfishness, where either you or the person that you're with, ideally it's going to be both of you, are having sex in a way that is really about making sure you're enjoying the experience and the experience is fulfilling for you. And when you do that, you will have a better time. A lot of the times your partner, honestly, I think most every time your partner is going to have a better time, because often the thing that turns us on is seeing whoever we're having sex with turned on and enjoying it. And so there needs to be a healthy amount of sexuality to get to a place where you are showing up in a way that you're saying, yes, I'm excited to be here. Yes, I'm excited to be having sex with you. And I'm not performing, I'm actually really doing it. This is great. That's the other thing that healthy selfishness and sexuality will kind of protect you from, is moving into a performance state, which is all around damaging for a relationship. One, because the person who's performing can often get resentful, either resentful about why doesn't my partner recognize that I'm not enjoying this, or it might be resentful around like, I'm always doing for them, they're never doing for me, or it might just be resentful of like, I don't want to have sex. I feel like I have to perform in order to make my partner happy, but I'm not enjoying this. And then on the other side, if ever your partner discovers that you are performing, that is going to be painful for them. And so a healthy amount of selfishness in sex can protect you from that possibility. But let's talk about it a little bit more. Let me break this down more rather than just like telling you why it's so good. What do I mean whenever I'm saying healthy amount of selfishness? So, in the most simple terms I can find, I would say that a healthy amount of sexual selfishness is showing up in a way where you are paying attention to what you want, what you desire sexually, and you are working to fulfill your desire. You are letting yourself do the things that are going to turn you on, make you feel good, leave you feeling satisfied at the end of the encounter. And what makes this healthy, rather than pure selfish desire, I'm going to do for me and I'm not going to care about you, is at the same time that you're thinking about your own sexual satisfaction and pleasure, you are also holding the greater experience of mutual pleasure as a high standard of what you're looking for. Neither one is more important than the other. Mutual pleasure is incredibly important because it protects the other person from being in a sexual encounter that they don't enjoy. And granted, a lot of that is up to them as well, but we can do things to make sure that our partners are having a good time. But mutual pleasure also includes you. You need to be working to make sure that you also have an enjoyable experience. And the ways that you can do that are communicating what you want, stating your desires, sharing fantasies, checking with the other person like, hey, this is what I want. Does this sound hot to you? And then whenever you're actually engaged in a sexual encounter, speaking up for the things that you know are going to make it more pleasurable. Asking for them to kiss your neck, asking for them to move into a certain position or move at a certain speed for you. And there are some people who are going to hear this and they're going to be afraid of being too selfish, which, if you were that person who's afraid of being too selfish, just the idea of alone that you're like, oh God, I don't want to be too selfish, makes me think that you probably won't be. But let me also kind of like work with that so that you can move into this process feeling confident. First, let's just honor the fact that the part of you that says, I don't want to be too selfish, has a valid point. When we go into too much selfishness, the extreme would be like sexually assaulting another person for our own gratification, That is the extreme. And there are people who do that, where they genuinely do not care about mutual pleasure and they're only working from a place of selfishness. And that is completely unacceptable. Nobody's desire trumps another person's, ever. Nobody's sexual interest is more important than another person's ability to say yes or no and their ability to protect and honor their own body. And so if you are someone who leans really far into doing what feels good for you and you forget to check with your partner, then you actually need less selfish desire. You need to move more towards the idea of like mutual pleasure and giving, rather than moving towards the space of being willing to take more, being willing to receive more. I think it'd actually be helpful to kind of like move through the stages. So there are people who are blatantly aggressive and willing to assert themselves on others to fulfill their desire, regardless of how the other person feels. Totally unacceptable. If you struggle with this, please find help, because there are things that can help you to move into a place where you will be able to control that urge. A level down from that would be a person who expresses their sexual desire in a coercive way, where they're hearing the other person say no, but they keep trying to push the boundary. And this happens both in just normal everyday life, people meeting each other and attempting to have a sexual encounter. And it happens in marriages, good marriages, where people love each other, and yet one partner still is saying, I want this thing, please, please, please. Usually not in exactly those words, but that's the feeling of it. I want to have sex, or I want to do this particular thing sexually, and the fact that you're telling me no is painful to me, and so I'm going to just keep trying, rather than accepting the disappointment, accepting the grief, allowing myself to recognize that I'm not always going to get the things I want, and that that's okay. In order to be in relationship with other people, I'm not always going to get what I want. And then the next level from there would be people who, and I would say that those are like the two ways in which people tend to show up if they're tipped into being too selfish. Either they're aggressive or they're coercive. And then there's healthy selfishness, where we're giving and taking, and we're working with mutual pleasure, and I'm showing up and sharing my desire and letting myself find my pleasure. And at times, letting that be the priority, not worrying so much about you, because you're going to take care of your own pleasure. That's healthy selfishness. And then on the other side of this spectrum would be the people who are not selfish enough and are constantly giving, constantly trying to make their partner feel good for so many reasons. It might be that they think this is the only way I can keep my partner interested in me, if I'm really, really good at taking care of them sexually. Or this is how I get somebody to fall in love with me, by showing up in a way that's really sexually sacrificing and all about the other person. Or maybe they just learned, like, this is how you have sex, this is what it looks like. And the type of sex they witnessed and learned how to have does not actually feel good to their body, and they don't know how to be in their own pleasure because they never learned it. And so it would require moving into a more selfish mindset of what do I want, so that they can find the thing that feels good to them. So start by just kind of figuring out where you land on this spectrum. Do you tend to be a little bit more on the selfish side, and you don't necessarily pay attention to what your partner's wanting? And maybe you're always the one who is receiving and getting the things that you enjoy, but you're not giving in return? Are you on the side of giving too much and feeling a little bit like, when's it my turn? When are you going to go down on me? Or when are we going to have sex until I orgasm, rather than having sex until you orgasm? Whatever the case may be. Do you tend to be giving too much and you're not operating from a place of being a little bit more selfish? Or do you tend to fall kind of in the center, a healthy selfishness, where you're listening to your desire, you are communicating your wants, you are acting in ways that will most fulfill your fantasies and bodily pleasure experiences, while at the same time holding in mind the idea, the principle of mutual pleasure. We both need to enjoy this in order for it to be a good experience, for it to be a satisfying experience. And then once you have a sense of where you are, then you'll know how to move. Do you need to move more towards asking the other person what they want, or do you need to move more towards asserting what you want? If you feel like sharing, I would love to hear where you fall on that spectrum and what it's like to even think about being a little bit more selfish in your sexuality. If you're the person who needs to move that direction. If you're the other person, then tell me what it's like to think about being more giving in your sexuality. Leave a comment for me. I love hearing about what comes up for you during these videos. Remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you want more content like this. I cover all things love, sex, and relationship, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye for now.